shouldn't do it. Okay.
Hey, I'm Truman with Park Tool.
Calvin Jones here with Park Tool.
Today we're going to be discussing spoke lacing patterns on wheels.
Yep. We're going to connect the dots in the hub to the dots in the rim. Those little holes to those little holes. Several different ways to do it.
A lot of times it is mostly just how many times a spoke crosses another spoke on its way to the rim is the different spoke patterns.
Straight out, crossing once, crossing several. This is an example here
of a no cross, also known as radial.
Radial, straight. So from the hub, spoke goes straight up to the rim.
So what are some interesting things that you can say about radially lacing a wheel?
They look cool and it's easy. You're not going to make a mistake. You go from here to here, you're done. No angle, worry about crossing things. Simple and fast.
Straightest, shortest way possible. It's potentially, fractionally lighter. And it goes straight to the rim, so doesn't have any crossing. There's not going to be any friction.
You could move it over from one hole to the next. Let's have a look at that one. One cross. One X, or we write it down, one X. One cross right there and there and there.
Two cross. Two cross is fairly common in our world. So you're crossing over here one time, two time, on its way to the rim.
That's right. And let's clarify this. We're only counting the flange that it's on. So this spoke crosses this spoke here and here. We're not looking through to these other spokes on the other flange. So just that one side. That's right. So that's your two cross.
Two cross.
Classic. Common. Very, very common. You go to the bike shops. This is your three cross. This, of course, you may recognize the most beautiful spoke pattern in the world.
Sure is a sharp looking wheel.
It is. Now, if we spin this thing, it goes crazily beautiful. Three. Right here. One, two, three. But Truman, we can try and trick him. You ready for this? We're going to start out at the rim and go one, two, three. It still works.
Same thing on both sides of the wheel too.
That's right. That's right. So this one is three cross.
Yeah.
Ramp it up.
Next would be four crosses. So this wheel can't be hub. It has four crosses. So this spoke, it's starting to get hard to see them all because you've got all the way down here. The head of this one is here, so it crosses one, two, three, four spokes.
And that, again, that head, those right there, tucked under it there, that's the first cross. That one's kind of tricky to see. One, two, three, four. This is your old high flange classic. The spoke is starting to leave it 90 degrees from the hub, but more on that later.
That's a little bit more.
Do we end at four? Is that all we got?
No way.
Yeah, we've got right here. One more. Five, just to show you an example. Whoa, that's a lot of crosses. Out here, one, two, three,
four.
Four. Three, four. Why did I?
Whoa, this is crazy.
This is good. That's fun. I thought I was wrong. This is a five cross. Whoa, check it out. One, two, three, four, five. Crazy.
That's wild. So my next note was, and then you can, and we saw this earlier, you can also mix and match. So here we have a two cross wheel, a two cross one side, radially laced on the other side. You can do things, you can mix and match, as we see here with our 4-5 cross.
Yep.
How do you determine what spoke pattern you're going to use on your wheel? Well, kind of comes back to you're connecting a hub to the rim. So you probably have selected a hub and a rim, and you have a goal in mind for your wheel set. Do you want to make the heaviest wheel set of all time? Do you want to try and make the lightest wheel set of all time? Do you want to make it durable? Do you want to make it something that's going to look cool? What are your goals? What are you doing? Are you touring? Do you need it to be field serviceable? Do you need it to be super durable?
Are you carrying weight? Do you have a disc brake? Do you have a rim brake? What loads are you going to be seeing?
Is it a front wheel or a rear wheel? These are all big time considerations when you're talking about your spoke pattern, but a lot of times it's affected by your component choice before you even get to the spokes.
If you picked certain patterns and certain flange diameters, you don't get no infinite choice. You're not going to get a 5-cross out of any kind of mountain bike, high flange hub, low flange hub. It's not going to happen.
So what are some of these other considerations that you're going to be running into when Calvin says high flange? What is the situation where we're going to be running into a high flange? This, let's see, where's our other one? Right here. Right here. We got a hub drive motor on an e-bike.
Yeah.
So this is a high flange, and they get much bigger than this even too. So what does that do for us?
Well, it limits you, number one. That you're going to see this one is a 2-cross, and this spoke is actually going, you can see it this way, straight up into the rim here. That's a good thing. You try and make this a 3-cross, spoke's going to be coming up and bending right at the end. We have an example a little bit later on that. But to get that a straight line, 2-cross is pretty much the limit when you get the big internal gears or the e-motors back here.
Yeah,
it is going to be...
So it's not just the e-motors, it's also internally geared hubs. So
right,
this is an internally geared hub.
Huge flange. The 4 or 5 type crosses, even a 3-cross, not a good idea at all.
Yeah, so and sometimes they get more extreme than this. So they will be 1 cross sometimes on rear hub drive motors. Sometimes I'm starting to see no cross, radial, rear motors.
You'll see that with a huge flange and a small rim and little bitty spokes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We'll get to it a little bit later, but there's a reason for the crosses. There's a big time reason for these crosses. So some other considerations would be weight. You're looking for it to be really light. What's the lightest spoke lacing?
There's a couple different ways that do that. Fewer crosses, you're cutting a little bit. You're probably better off getting a thinner gauge than thinking, oh, I'm going to go a 2-cross on a 3-cross. That's really going to save me. Thinner gauge, you're going to do better than that. So sometimes a false economy. Another aspect, can you simply get it?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
You're going to build your wheels. You may want to source stuff all out before you do your buying. If you buy the hub first, okay, that's great, got a good deal on it. Then I'm going to buy my spokes. Whoops, now we better find the rim that matches those. And it might be a tricky operation.
So as an example, for this hub, it's only available in a 28 hole. We couldn't go with a 32, so we had to go with that 28 hole.
That's right.
So the availability is a consideration. And once you have the 28 hole, typically the fewer number of spokes in that wheel will lead to fewer crosses potentially.
And eliminating some. 4-cross on a 28 hole, this is going to get kinked. A bad idea.
So we were talking about considerations for wheels. We talked about front or rear as being important, or disc brake or rim brake. So that's really important here. Calvin, let's discuss it.
Well, what kind of loads are we dealing with? When we ride a bike, we like to pedal. So let's do that. Here I'm on my hub. I'm cranking it this way. That hub's going to move. We have 2 styles of spokes right here. So this one is going to be stressful. It's going to be pulling, right? Or the trailing spoke as you're rotating. This one leading it, it's moving along with it, but it's going to be interesting as I twist this, the tension's going to change here. Remember, when you ride, the dynamics is what's important. Aluminum flexes, the steel flexes, there's loads every pedal stroke. So this goes around. That's just one of the loads. Once this reaches the bottom here, there's a slight relaxation, and then it comes back up in tension. So some videos we have in our library on that dynamic aspect of it.
Yeah, so these spokes go through a cycle of stresses.
Yeah.
You know, from going, pedaling, and then as it rotates, hitting the bottom, reducing in tension, and then you get to the point where you want to stop, and then it completely reverses which spokes have tension on them.
And you can actually see this on a bike. We have a bike right here, and we have a tension tester. So you're going to want us to use our ear and a little tapper here. What should we show them first? Pedaling?
Pedaling, yeah, let's go.
So we're going to put some load on with our Truman's mighty leg. We're going to say it's an arm. So first, let's give him no tension here. Ready? Everyone get that in your head. Okay, now let's show him a load. Whoa.
Yeah.
That went down in tension, but he was pedaling. I am the ground, by the way. We should define that. I'm the dirt trail, the gravel road here. He's cranking up a steep hill. But look at the direction of this spoke.
So you're leading.
The flange is twisting, dropping tension. Let's try this neighbor. It's getting tighter. As you
A higher
pedal.
pitch.
That's right. So it's going up in tension. This one's coming down in tension. Wheel's not twisting around. You're simply riding down the road. Normal. But we're coming down the hill. Something crossed our path. Big turkey got in the way. We got to hit the brakes, Truman. So if I pull here, let me pull forward. There we go. Can you hear that? Let's do it. Let's do it this one here. This one. It's the opposite. It's the opposite because the flange on the opposite side is trying to move us in the opposite direction. So that tight loosening transmitted better through the tangent arrangement of the spoke.
So when you're riding your bike, do you think that there's more load transmitted through a spoke when you're going or when you're slowing? Leave your comment down below. We're about to tell you the answer.
Slowing.
Slowing.
Yeah.
Yep.
The energy difference from you going fast to going down to close to zero is huge. You're scrubbing that energy out.
Think about how long it takes you to accelerate your bike from 0 to 20 miles per hour. It's going to take you, I don't know, you're really fast, 5 seconds. But you slowing from 20 down to 0, it's going to take you 2 seconds.
There's more stress on the slowing, which is why that the spoking pattern is not for radial, not recommended for disc brakes, especially. It does not transmit that load.
Okay, well, we've just now entered into a whole new world of, we're now talking about radial in a wheel that's driven or slowed via the hub. Here, we have a radial on a rear wheel where it's driven and slowed, has disc brakes, and it has radial spokes. Well, it also has crust, so it shares it. And that is something you have to put a lot of trust into your hub because it's transmitting a lot of power through the hub shell.
That's right. So the middle here is actually taking some of that torsional load, that twisting's going on, which is why you will never see the beautiful shape of the skinny center. You try that with this, you're going to blow that apart. So the better hubs for the type of pattern are going to be fatter, able to handle that load.
A lot more durable.
This on the load on rim braking, let's talk about rim braking. Rim braking here, you're transmitting that load, the braking, through the rim. It's not going through the hub at all. Not stressful at all to the hub. Only the pedaling loads the spokes here. Braking, not really a thing.
So in a radial, let's take this one. Let's pretend this side is radial as well. When you twist this, these spokes are going to all increase in tension. And they are going to wind up, maybe hopefully just slightly, but they're going to wind up a little bit. And that's one of the big things, is it's going to put a lot of force on this little teeny section of the hub. So you're no longer using this large section of material to brace up against. You're now using this teeny tiny little section.
The distance from the hole centered up to here, that little bitty bit, versus cutting across all of this side pattern here. So that's why the hub manufacturer is designed for it here. You just can't, right? You can't take the ugly caterpillar here and make it the lovely butterfly. It has to be designed.
A lot of times there are hub manufacturers out there, like high quality, premium level manufacturers, that say do not lace these hubs radially.
Right.
You can't lace these radially.
And listen to them.
Yeah, don't do that. Yeah.
Another aspect of lacing we talked about was spoke length. And you can see it here. This is a 3-cross, as we said. Let's have a look at a tape measure here. So I have my 4-cross, 3-cross. This is where we are on a 3-cross. That's the actual 1, 2, 3. But we talked about spoke length. Let's pretend this spoke here, I'm measuring it, I'm seeing about 285. If I were a 2-cross, I come back here, I'm about 275. A 1-cross, this is where it would be. Oh, about 270. Radial 0-cross, about a 268. It's shorter, a little bit longer, longer. If this were a 4-cross, 302, 303, so it gets longer. And the 4-cross, not really an advantage, but it's a little bit difference in length, a little bit of weight. Important to some people, maybe.
Yeah, and a lot of times in like a touring bike, you're going to have a high number of spokes, and you're also going to have a larger gauge of spoke, and you're going to have as many crosses as possible. And that's going to give you the most durability as possible.
I would say durability, part of that, what are we getting there? You're doing lots and lots of miles going back and forth across the country. All the spokes are seeing a stress cycle. When you get more and more spokes, you're sharing that load over more and more. You have more neighbors taking the load.
And the larger gauge, the more material is taking that fatigue cycle.
That's right. So it's going to simply last longer. It's durability. If this is the rim, that's a 40 hole for our 4-cross. We have a 28-hole rim, the exact same model. We're going to plow each of them into a boulder. You may not get more strength.
No.
You're not going to get more strength out of the 40-hole, those kind of 4-cross patterns. But in terms of just riding the bike and carrying that gear in the stress cycle, yes. More spokes, share it. The thicker the spoke, it's going to be hitting that more and more of a stress cycle. Right? But avoid those boulders. It's not going to help.
Yeah, then there's also some fun. We talked about, when you were talking about selecting different hubs and how they kind of force you to do certain things. Here's an interesting one. These ones are bird spokes, and it's 28 hole, and they're paired. But the crazy thing is, you have to basically lace them together and then hook them onto this, which is pretty fun.
Yeah.
It's a cool little thing, but you can only do it one way. You can't, well, there's 2 different ways we could do this. So we have it this way, and the other way to do it would be this way. And what does that do, Calvin? What did we just do?
You change something, and it makes you feel good that you've changed it.
Exactly. It's a little bit of a conversation piece. So these cross. So one's leading and one's trailing, but one's outside of another putting force on the other one. And one of them, all that force is going into the hub flange. So there's a couple ways you could look at this. You could say, hey, I am going to be giving more power cycles. So I'm going to have more power cycles. So I want that trailing spoke that I'm pulling forward, I want to have as much bracing as possible, and I want to have the other spoke not underneath it. But then I'm slowing less often, so I want to have this one outside, and it'll fatigue the inner spoke and that spoke less. Or you can put it this way, and then this spoke is now, during braking, it's going to have the most bracing. So there's going to be a little bit less flex under braking. So a couple different ways you could do it, but kind of a fun little thing, a little technology. Think about, it's not going to actually affect any of your riding.
Manufacturers sometimes tie you into a pattern completely. You've got that, you've got to stick with it. You're not going to a steel spoke here. This one is also proprietary. You can't be changing this one around. You break a spoke, you'd better have that.
Another one you're kind of at the bay of the manufacturer is straight pull spokes.
Right.
So straight pull spokes, you can't go out and select how many crosses you're going to have.
Or use this traditional J-bend.
This is a straight pull, so it has a nail head, goes through a straight small hole poked in line with where the spoke is going to be going. You can lace this hub fully with spokes and then plug it into a rim.
You can't take this and bend it. If I said, oh, I don't want this cross pattern, I'll just bend it up here. Bad idea.
You're gonna be ruining the benefit of a straight pull, basically.
Yeah, right. But again, the lacing's easy. You shouldn't be making mistakes. Whoops, I put it in the wrong hole? No, it's going to go straight to those holes.
So in a wheel like this, Calvin, do you have any opportunity to do something? Is there something you could do or not do?
There is something you can do. You can do different gauges and something called interlace.
Yep.
So we have an idea here that the spokes go over its cross, over its cross. This one also goes over its cross. It is not interlaced. This last cross to the rim does not go under. Here we go.
But here we go, over, under. And then you get them touching each other as they cross.
That's right. This is also a good one here for the camera. When you get fewer and fewer crosses, when you start interlacing, you're kinking. You're getting a pretty good kink there.
If you interlace a one cross, it's going to have a severe kink.
Yeah, and you're just asking to have a stress riser. Now that's a good example why this would be good with no interlace. 2 cross on this one, I would not have done that.
Yep. And we've discussed interlacing before in previous videos.
One thing we talked about that I do want to show, this one's a little bit subtle. It's kind of hard to see. When you have this 5 cross, it's coming up, 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 up. The nipple is not straight in line with that spoke. A little bend here.
Less of a kink on this side, more of a kink on this side.
That's right. So these are all a little bit kinked here.
The other thing is if you break one of these spokes, the opposing spoke on the other side that's going the other way is covering 1/4 of the spoke head. So it's going to be hard to get that spoke out of there and replace it. You might have to detension 2 different spokes to get that spoke replaced, which isn't ideal.
Let's talk a little bit why I feel that's so important, keeping that straight. If it's coming up into the rim and it's entering the rim crooked, there we go. That's an extreme example. Every time I tighten the spoke, I'm going to be bending that head again and again all the way around. You're kinking the thread. That's the worst place. You're right in a stress riser to be putting a kink and a bend as you tighten it.
Typically, a spoke, where spokes break, is they'll typically break here, where the spoke is, or the nipple is threaded onto the spoke, or at the J-bend. And typically, that has to do with the stress cycles. Because here, there's a stress riser because there's a kink in it, and then there's the neck down of having the threads end right there. So you got a couple things going on there. And then you add in the kink at the end. This one, you have this work hardened, so it's a little bit more brittle corner. And then when it detensions, it can put a little bit of an opposing force on it. So it's just the stress cycles all add up to it. If you have a break in the middle, there's a couple things that would cause that. Not common. You got a stick in your spokes. Your friend rode India.
Yep. Loose spokes. You ride a loose spoke and you got the old violin saw going on. A little bit of rubbing, rub, 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 rub. Some dirt in there, you bet you're going to be breaking some spokes.
It'll be some pretty durable spokes, because if you've got low tension, it's going to increase the the force on that fatigue cycle. So when it detensions at the bottom, it's going to make it even worse. Yeah. And so even before they saw through each other, you're typically going to break at the J-bend or at the nipple if you're running too low of tension.
Well, if you've been building some wheels, either your own wheels or other people's wheels, what sort of lacing patterns would you enjoy? There's some crazy ones out there.
Yeah, there's people who do the flowers and snowflakes and all kinds of different patterns. And at the end of the day, going back to the beginning of this video, the main goal is attaching your hub to your rim.
That's right. You get tension in your pattern. It's going to work. So there are going to be some subtle differences. But tell us what you've seen.
Yeah. Well, what's your favorite?
In the comments below.
And on that note, we'll see you guys next time. I hope you get out there and get your hands dirty.
Between the wheels.